Hey guys, this is John over at CheatSheetPros. I hope everybody had a Merry Christmas and you got to spend some time with your family. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to run over the playoff scenario. I took some notes on the teams that need to win for Week 17 or the teams that winning is going to help their playoff chances to move up a seed. So what we're going to do is I'm going to run over this playoff scenario with you. And this is our set that we're going to use for 2020 for all of our video breakdowns. And then I'm going to move over to my desktop computer and we're going to open up the NFL cheat sheet and we're going to go game by game for the ones that we want to focus on, the teams that need to win, and find some good plays and see how they rank up. I'll also do a write-up article, so if you don't want to watch the video, the write-up article will be posted in the Facebook group. So the teams that we're going to focus on that need to win right now are Tennessee, Oakland, Philadelphia, Dallas, San Francisco, Seattle, New Orleans, Green Bay, New England, and Kansas City. So this is kind of how the playoff picture breaks down. I didn't go over every scenario because there's a lot of different ones out there. So Tennessee, if they win, they're in. They get the 6th seed. So Tennessee is highly motivated to win this game, so we need to look at some plays there. Oakland, it's kind of a miracle that they may get in the playoffs, but it is viable. So Oakland needs to win the game, and then they need wins by Baltimore, Houston, Indianapolis, and then one of either Chicago, Detroit, KC, or New England to get in. Philadelphia, they're just like Tennessee. They win and they're in. They get a game. Dallas, so Dallas needs a little bit of help. They need to beat Washington at home, and they're a very large favorite, so we're going to look at Ezekiel Elliott. And then they also need the Giants to beat Philadelphia to get in. Now those games are being played at the same time, so Dallas is going to be motivated to go all out and win this game. Now San Francisco, they've got the #1 seed right now, which means a first round bye and home field advantage throughout the playoffs. However, if they lose to Seattle, they can fall all the way to a 5 or a 6 seed, which is going to mean a wild card road game, and they do not want to do that. Also, on the other side of that, Seattle, they are in the wild card right now regardless, win or lose. But if they win this game and beat San Francisco, they could move all the way up to the 2 seed. So the San Francisco-Seattle game is going to have a big impact. The Saints right now, they're the #3 seed. And if they win and Seattle wins, they can move up to a #2 seed. So they do have a reason to win. Not a ton, so if Seattle starts getting blown out, you may see Kamara rest in the second half. I like Latavius Murray in this game. I think you're going to see a lot of Kamara and Michael Thomas in the first half, but depending on what the score is and how that other game's going, those guys may sit the second half or even the fourth quarter, so be careful. The Packers, they need a win versus Detroit, and they get the #2 seed, so they're going to be ready to go. Now, they can also move up to the #1 seed if Carolina can beat New Orleans and the Packers get a win versus Detroit. So either way, if they win the game, they're the #2 seed, and then they can get a little bit of help later on to move up to the #1 seed. New England, theirs is simple. If they beat Miami, then they get a first-round bye, which I don't think will be an issue. I think that line opened at 14, 14.5, and it's out to 16.5 to 17 right now. And then Kansas City, baby, they're the #3 seed right now in the playoffs. And a few things could happen. They could move up to a 2 seed or they could fall to a 4 seed. So right now they're a 3 seed. So if they win the game and somehow Miami, which I'm going to be a big Dolphins fan this week, beats New England, Kansas City could move up to the 2 seed. However, if they lose, there's a scenario where they could fall to the 4 seed. So Kansas City is going to be out ready to go. So that's what I have right now for the playoff scenario. So what I'm going to do is flip over to my desktop so we can go ahead and get started and take a look at some DFS plays for Week 17. Thanks, guys.
All right, guys, I've got the NFL Week 17 cheat sheet opened up, and we're going to take a look at a few games. So this is the Saints game up here, and this is one of the games that we identified that would like to win to improve their playoff scenario. And so some of the plays we can look at here, just glancing at the sheet if you've never seen it before, these are all your Vegas totals up here, plays per game. This is where the public money is at. This is your sports betting line. A lot of sports bettors, they have a lot of forums, and this is kind of the line they project. It's not mine, so I always look at it as a comparison. And then over here we have all offensive stats on the top, defensive stats on the bottom. We got the season, how it ranks, home, road, passing, rushing. And then down here we have the players for each team. And so this is the Saints. And then this is what the opponent DVP looks like. Points they're allowing, how it ranks. This is DVOA based, not a random ESPN poll. And then this is the DVOA rush and pass defense they're facing, and then the DVOA specific wide receiver 1, 2, other tight end, and pass catching running backs. So that's a quick breakdown of what we're going to look at if you're new to the sheet. So here on the Saints, of course, we have the Saints winning. We're projecting this to be pretty close to what Vegas has. The first thing I do is I glance over here at offensive points per game. And then you can see the Saints are at 27.7, so we'll say 28 points per game. So they're fifth best. And then Carolina, even though they've been struggling lately, they are 18th. But then they've got Will Grier, or Greer, however you pronounce that, going at QB. So one of the things I like to look at over here in this column is yards allowed. And so I look at this rank for rushing and then passing to see if anything jumps out at me. And then I check here at defensive points allowed. I look at the ranks real quick and the points and see if anything jumps out. So right off the bat, I'm going to let you guys take a look at the sheet. Is there anything that jumps out at you? Okay, two things should jump out immediately. So right here, Carolina allowing 28.5 points per game. That's 31st. So pretty much second to last in the NFL. That's a big red flag. So Saints are going to be able to score. That's not going to be an issue. And then over here, the other thing that should jump out at you is rushing yards allowed. So Carolina, and I know it's Carolina because they're bottom, and so they're the bottom on both of these. So Carolina is allowing 145.4 rushing yards per game, and that's 31st. So that's second to last in the entire NFL. So this tells me the Saints are going to be able to run the ball. So we come over here, and we're going to look at Alvin Kamara and Latavius Murray. Out of those two, I like Latavius Murray. I think the Saints are going to get a big lead in this game, and Latavius Murray is going to do a lot of running the rock, pounding the clock, running it down, and then hopefully resting some starters towards the fourth-ish quarter, depending on how they run. And over here, we've got the 32nd DVOA rush defense, so we're going to look for the Saints to pound that running game. The Carolina's passing defense, DVOA, is 8th, and they're only allowing 230 passing yards, so that's not terrible. So definitely, if we're going to funnel this game, it's going to be the running game. However, if you can afford Michael Thomas, these pass defense numbers, they don't matter when you talk about studs, so to speak. So I don't care if they're number one versus the wide receiver one. It's Drew Brees, Michael Thomas. He's going to throw it where no one else can get it. Michael Thomas is going to get his, although if they're up, he may not play the fourth quarter and he may not have a monster ceiling game unless Carolina finds a way to stay in this. Also, Carolina is allowing the 32nd most points to the running back position, so they're last, and that's 30.5 fantasy points per game, and then they're 30th to the wide receiver, so that's 41.5 points per game, so that's a ton of points they're giving up. Over here on the Carolina side, I don't really like Christian McCaffrey. I think he's pretty expensive, and if they're getting blown out, I don't think he's going to play the second half. Why would you get him hurt when you've got all next season for him to come back to? That and the Saints are allowing the 6th least amount of points to the running back position, and they have the 11th and 13th DVOA defenses, so not a lot I like here on Carolina. You know, if you want to get crazy and go with some wide receivers or stack a cheap QB in there, that's fine. I don't have an issue with it, just not something that I'm looking at. So let's go ahead and slide down. I tried to change my mouse pointer and it disappeared again. It comes and it goes to that little red circle so everybody could see it. There, it's back. All right, let's go down, mouse. All right, we're going to slide down here to not Buffalo, to the New England game. So New England wins, they get a first round bye. We take a quick look at this. They opened at 14, moved out to 15.5. Sports betting line has them at minus 13. So 13, 15, okay, they're going to blow them out. On the Miami side, there's not a lot I like here. If you glance at this column here, all these pass defenses and rush defenses they're allowing the least amount of points to almost every position on the board. So I'm definitely not going to play Laird. I don't like Parker or Hearns. They're going to be in tough coverage matchups. Fitzpatrick's too expensive at 5,800 going up against New England, where their Vegas implied total is only 14.5 points. So I'm probably going to just put an X on Miami, not use any of them. New England, more than likely they're going to win this game. I'm a big Dolphins fan this week. I want them to win so Kansas City can move up, but that's not likely. So one of the things that jumps out at me is right here. And so I'm looking at these two columns. So defensive points allowed per game. So Miami's allowing the most at 31.3, so they rank last. And New England is the best at 13.2. So that's the big thing that jumps out at me here. And then over here, you can see Miami's just terrible. They're allowing 135.4 rushing yards per game, which ranks 27th, 265 passing yards per game, which ranks 28th, and then vice versa. New England's solid. So anyone you want to play on New England is fine. I'm probably looking at someone along the lines of White or Michelle. And then Edelman, I haven't made up my mind yet. He'll get his, but I think once they get up, it's going to go back to a running game and let everybody get healthy and take it easy. But you can see Miami is 31st and 28th versus the wide receiver 1 and 2. So any one of these wide receivers could blow up and have a good game. So for GPP, if you're doing several lineups, you might plug in some of these lower-owned guys in here. If you're doing cash, I like Edelman to go in there because you know he's got a safe floor. And here you can see that Miami's allowing the 27th most fantasy points per game to the wide receiver, and that's 40.5. And then 29th most to the running backs, and that's 29.3. And then let's go ahead and go down and check out another game. All right, now we're going to go down here to the Packer game. Now, huge implications here. So the Packers want to win this game. And if they win it, they have the number 2 seed, and there's a small scenario, if you remember me talking, where if Carolina beat New Orleans, they can move to a number 1 seed. So this should be a pretty easy game for them. Glancing at it, this is the week you see a lot of lines that move. So it opened at 10.5. It's out to 12.5 now. And then I'm going to glance over here at these columns that we had went over. And the one thing that jumps out at me is Detroit is allowing the most passing yards in the NFL on a per-game basis at 282.6. So dream scenario for Aaron Rodgers here. He should have a heyday. And then both teams are allowing about the same amount of rushing yards. Nothing jumps out. Points per game, there's nothing that jumps out at me there. Defensive points allowed, Detroit's allowing almost 27 per game, which is 26th. So Green Bay should have a good game here. They should put up 24 to 27 points without an issue. The only question is going to be, is it going to be Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams, or are we going to get one of these running backs in here for a good game? For cheap, I like Jamal Williams this week at only 5,500. You can see right down here that Detroit is 28th versus pass-catching running backs. Now, Jamal Williams is the primary pass-catching running back, but Aaron Jones is definitely going to get his. And again, what I worry about is if they get a lead, are they going to rest Jones? Week 17's got a lot of variables, and a lot of things can change. So I like Jamal Williams. He's getting a 60-40 share of the snaps, the 40% side. So at 5,500, he's definitely viable, and he could get some extra run. And you can see they're 28th across the board to QBs, running backs, and wide receivers, thus how many points per game. Really like Devontae Adams at 8,000. I'd prefer to pay that over 9,900 for Michael Thomas. I also love Lazard. Before I started recording this video, I was glancing through here, and Lazard at 4,000. I mean, that's just silly. I mean, he's someone that I'll have a lot of. And then you can see Detroit versus the wide receiver 1 are 15th. That's decent. Wide receiver 2s, they're 29th. Well, I'd consider Lazard the wide receiver 2. Now, I do need to go to PFF and take a look at the coverage chart and see how that looks. But right now, I'm leaning on Adams, Lazard. I think this will be a good game. And no matter what you're playing, you want to have a piece of this. Either Jones or Williams, Adams, Lazard. Just get a piece in your lineup because they're going to score some points. Over on the Detroit side, I don't really care. I haven't followed Detroit a lot. they're kind of so-so, up and down. Yeah, you could. I mean, Kenny Galladay, I think he'll be solid next year. Amendola has some big games. Galladay has some big games. I could see him coming out, laying up a 10-point game and ending the season. Who knows? And let me scroll down here. So KC's the next one I want to take a look at. And this one's got a pretty fair line on it. Opened at 7.5, moved out to 9. And the sports betting line has it at roughly 9.5. So we're right on, I'd say. We're pretty close to it. Kansas City should win this game. The Chargers have been struggling. Glancing at all these stats over here, both teams have a great pass defense. I don't see any holes there. The one is Kansas City's rush defense, but this is for the season. In the last 4 or 5 games, they've got a lot better. So that's not something I'm going to worry about. Now, both teams are not really running. So you can see here, the Chargers are 27th in rushing yards per game, and the Chiefs are 23rd. So Mahomes is airing it out a lot, so I like him as a QB play. And then you can see both teams are 6th and 4th for most passing yards. So this could be a shootout game where it goes over the total. These two teams end up playing close. I've been to a lot of the Kansas City and Charger games, especially if they fall in prime time. And they usually always come down to the wire, so I wouldn't be shocked. And then over here, points per game, Kansas City's 4th at 28. That's solid. So they're going to get their points. Defensive points per game allowed. Kansas City's improved vastly. They're down to 19.1, which is 7th best in the NFL. So on the Charger side, I don't like Phillip Rivers, although 5,400 is pretty cheap. But what I'm looking at here is the total defense, rush and pass, which Kansas City's gotten better recently. But if you want to use one of these running backs, I think that's a viable option. At 6,062, you're good with either one. I lean Eckler for the PPR option because they should be throwing the ball a lot out of the backfield, playing catch-up in the second half especially. If they've got the lead, Melvin Gordon's probably going to get more carries up the middle, but I like the upside of Eckler. He's got a bigger ceiling. Kansas City's giving up 30 points to running backs, so just play one of them. If you're doing a cash game, plug one in there. Let's see, for receivers, they really haven't had a receiver that's blown up or done really well. Kansas City, look at this. They allow the second least amount of points to the wide receiver position at 25.9. That's pretty darned impressive. Now, they struggle versus tight ends a little bit, but the tight end spectrum, you can see 14.8's 29th. You can go from 11 to 15 points and move 20 spots. So if you want to do a contrarian stack, I'm not, but you could do like a Rivers, Eckler, Henry. That would be a viable stack to take a look at. I'm over here for Kansas City. I don't mind Mahomes. He's usually always going to get a 2.5x floor, 3.5x upside. The Chargers are tough to QBs, but again, Mahomes is a stud. He's going to get his regardless. I don't really like any running backs here. Kansas City's been splitting up the backfield quite a bit. If I was going to use one, I think Damian Williams or LaShawn McCoy, if they're both active this week, one of them's going to get a TD. That's almost a guaranteed. So if you get a touchdown at 4.2 or 4.7K, that's almost 1.5x right there. So one of them's going to return value. Tyreek Hill, 7,700. Chargers are 25th versus wide receiver 1. Okay, we could use him. Kelsey's also 7,000, so these are expensive options if you're going to go to Kansas City, and they are 19th versus the tight end, so decent. You could use them, probably be pretty chalky, and Kelsey, he's had a couple decent games, but no monster games, and this is one of my favorite games right here, so we're going to go look at Tennessee and Houston. So Tennessee opened up as pick'em, and they're out to 3.5. So people are hammering the Titans. Tannehill's really turned this team around. Vegas sports betting line has it at 3.8, so between 3.5 and 4, right at what Vegas moved it to. So that means they're taking a lot of bets on Tennessee. And then over here, we're pretty much same on points per game, pretty close on defensive points allowed. Yardage, both teams can run the ball. And then it looks like Houston's got a little bit more in the air. Both teams are allowing a lot of passing yards, and they're semi-tied on rushing yards. So this is probably going to be a higher scoring game. The total's moved from 48 to 45.5, so down 2.5 points. So playoff game, it could be a lot of running the ball. Derrick Henry at 8,100 is a definite viable option. A lot of people really like him this week. This is the 13th DVOA rush defense, and they allow the 26th most fantasy points to the running back position. So I think Henry will be high owned. He doesn't catch a lot of passes, though, so he's got to get it done on the ground and in the end zone. So he's not my favorite play, but he is someone that if you want to use, he's definitely viable. What I love even more, though, is taking Ryan Tannehill at 6,800 and pairing him with A.J. Brown at 7,000. 7,000 is expensive, but A.J. Brown could have a monster game here. And especially when I look at this number right here is key. So Houston giving up 270 yards in the air. So that's 30th in the NFL. That's great for Tannehill and A.J. Brown, and A.J. Brown will be a part of it. So if Tannehill has a big game, A.J. Brown's going to have a big game, so that's probably the first stack I'm going to go to. And then if you want to do a three-man stack, you could do like a Henry, A.J. Brown, Jonnu Smith, or throw in one of these three guys with it, and then you could always run it back on this side with Hopkins or one of these cheaper receivers and hope the game's a shootout. Let me scroll down here and see what we got. We're not going to get into the Indy game. Dallas, this is another game that I love. So Dallas opened at 7, moved out to 10.5, so people were hammering Dallas. The sports betting line, though, has this at 4. So 4.5, playing at home. You know, these teams are pretty close, but it really just depends on what Dallas team shows up. We've seen him show up and blow people out, and then we've seen him struggle and lose the game. So Dallas is averaging 25.8 points per game, and that's good for 8th. But if you notice this here, I don't put a lot of weight in this, but at home they're averaging 30 points per game versus only 22 on the road. So Dallas is going to score some points, and they have to win this game to have a shot to get in the playoffs. So you can see their home yardage, too, is way up. 388 versus 468 at home. That's really good. I mean, they're one of the top for offensive yards per game on the season at 425 per game. That's really good. They haven't been as quite as efficient as some of the other teams. And then over here, I mean, both of these numbers are good. Nothing jumps out. 130 rushing yards a game, almost 300 passing yards per game. Those are solid. On the Washington side, they can't run. Less than 100 rushing yards per game. And then you've got passing, they're terrible. 175, ranked dead last, actually, in passing yards per game. So we come down here. Over on the Washington side, I don't want anything to do with them. I'm not going to play any Washington players. If you are going to use someone, I like Adrian Peterson. This guy's getting in the end zone almost every week. He's 4,900. You know, he's good for 10 points, 15 if he has a good game and gets a touchdown. So, hey, why not? Dallas is semi-tough, though. They're allowing the 10th least amount of points to the running back position. And I'm not going to touch any Keenum McLaurin combos or putting in any Jeremy Sprinkle this week. Over here, I love Ezekiel Elliott this week. $8,000 is a lot of money to pay, but this is a must-win game for him. And he's facing a defense that's giving up 141 rushing yards per game, which is 29th in the NFL. So this is going to be the funnel right here. Zeke has to pound the rock. He's got to have a big game. He should be over 100 yards, a touchdown, 3 or 4 catches, and hopefully he gets a second touchdown because then he would absolutely crush value. They're allowing the 25th most fantasy points to the running back position. So I think if Dallas comes out and wins this game like they should, Zeke's going to get the ball a lot. There was some stat I heard on the last game, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but if Zeke touches the ball X amount of times, they're 8-0. So, come on, man. You've got to pound Zeke. Anyways, 25th DVOA rush defense. Zeke's going to get a lot of stuff. And then we've got Gallup, Cooper in the air. Both priced reasonable. Cooper's had some dud games recently, and they're only giving up the 12th ranked amount of fantasy points to the wide receiver position. And this is kind of tricky here. So you can see versus the wide receiver 1, Dallas is 6th, but versus the wide receiver 2, they're 32nd. So if you call Cooper the default number 1, Gallup could have a monster game here. Typically, when we do find big games, this is what we're looking at. At 5,400, he's a great play. So you could even do Dak, Gallup, and then throw Zeke in there and have a good stack. So I'm going to have a piece of this in my lineups for sure. And then let me see, Philly, they're another team that has to win, and they are in. So I'm looking over here. Rushing, passing, everybody's kind of about the same. They fall in this yellow category as far as rankings. The Giants here, I see this little green rank, so I'm going to look at that. They're giving up 28 points per game. It's just ridiculous. And they're giving up a ton of passing yards. So in this one, I like Carson Wentz. He's only 6.1K on DraftKings, 25th most points to running backs. Rush defense, the Giants are DVOA sitting at number 8. Pass defense, they're 31st. So look at Carson Wentz, Miles Sanders to catch a lot of balls out of the backfield. I love Greg Ward this week at only 4,700. They're giving up 40 points to the wide receiver, 29th most in the NFL. And they rank 32nd, which is dead last versus the wide receiver 1. And I believe Ward is the default 1 this week. I don't think Alshon's back. Ertz is questionable at 6K. If he's in, he'll catch a lot of balls. If not, Goddard's going to be a lock for me. So you could do Wentz, Ward, Goddard, Sanders. Take Wentz and 2 of those other 3, and you're going to have a solid stack that's going to get some points. They've got to win the game. And passing is how they're going to do it. Over here on the Giants side, I don't really know how they're going to play this. Barkley had a monster game, so his price is back up to 8.7K. Philadelphia has been a lot tougher. And you can see pass catching running backs, they're 6th and they're 8th versus fantasy points to the running back position. So I'll probably fade Barkley this week. I think a lot of people are going to own him because of the monster game he had last week. I had him in almost every lineup last week. I mean, he was dirt cheap, but now at almost 9K, there's other places I would rather go. I'd rather look at Zeke for 8K, who should get the ball a ton, and they need to win, so I know that's going to happen. This could be something where they start getting blown out, and they're like, hey, let's not get Barkley hurt for next year, and he sits down, and then one of these other guys comes in and takes over. Wide receiver, Danny Dimes was on fire last week, so you could look at Shepard, Slayton, Golden Tate, any one of these guys that are all priced right. And Philly's given up the 30th most points to the wide receiver position, and that's good for 41.5 points. So any of them are in play this week. I don't have an issue with that. And that's where we're going to go ahead and stop right now. This other game, Baltimore's resting everybody, so we have Robert Griffin and Gus Edwards leading that if you want to get some low-owned guys. But Pittsburgh is a tough defense to go up against. So those are the plays that I like for Week 17. So hope you guys like it. Good luck. Have a happy new year, and we'll be back in 2020 to rock out some NFL playoffs. Thanks, guys.